Well, the government's big pro-EU leaflet is out with lots of facts and figures about the benefits of membership of the European Union. But do they all stack up, according to the Sky News specialists? First of all, let's take economics. And there's a big claim about 44% of UK exports going across into the EU. Now, that is true, but it's worth noting it's in decline. A few years ago, the number was about 50%. Secondly, there's the claim about being inside the common market and how that makes life cheaper for businesses. Now, of course, that's true as well. But even if the UK were outside the EU and had an arrangement a bit like Norway, we'd still be inside the common market. Finally, there's a big fact. £540 billion worth of foreign direct investment going into the UK over the course of the past decade. The big question, though, is whether that investment would have happened anyway, even if we were outside Europe.
Economic issues are relevant to many of the key social questions too, by far the most incendiary of which is immigration. The leaflet says that if we left the EU, much like Norway, which isn't a member but still needs access to that crucial EU single market, we would still have to accept EU immigration. Others say we could cut it down by 100,000 a year if we left the EU. The truth is we don't know, but it would depend on exactly what we could negotiate in order to secure access to that crucial market. And remember, immigration is a two-way street. The leaflet warns that travel perks we currently enjoy, the ability to travel and work widely in Europe at a cheap cost, would become harder and more expensive in the event of a Brexit. And there's no question that in the short term, at least, that claim is true. And what about things that aren't mentioned in the leaflet at all? Employment rights like working hours and parental leave, protection from discrimination and equality. Those are things that are currently guaranteed by Brussels. And if we left the EU, we'd be at the mercy of whichever British government was in place.
It's very hard to measure security when we're trying to assess whether or not Britain would be safer inside the EU or outside the EU. One thing that will never, ever change, and that is that Britain is an island, which does make borders easier to protect, much easier than on continental Europe. By being a member of the EU, Britain is also a part of Europol, which gives police forces here access to data and fingerprint records from other police forces around Europe. And that would cease to be the case if Britain were to leave the European Union. The leaflet also correctly points out that around 1,000 criminals have been arrested on the continent and brought back to the UK to face justice using what's known as the European Arrest Warrant. However, only one terrorist has been detained using those powers. Ultimately, no one yet has made the case decisively that proves that Britain would be safer if it were to leave the EU. And as Ed and Afua have pointed out, this leaflet, for all its facts, all its figures, doesn't decide the case one way or the other.